Kokoro. By Natsume Sōseki. Kokoro is a novel by the Japanese author Natsume Sōseki. It was first published in 1914. In serial form in the Japanese newspaper Asahi Shimbun. The title, translated literally, means heart. The word contains shades of meaning, and can be translated as the heart of things or feeling. During the novel's initial serial run, from April 20 to August 11, 1914, it was printed under the title Kokoro, Sensei no Isho, Kokoro, Sensei's Testament. When later published in novel form by Iwanami Shoten, its title was shortened to Kokoro. The rendering of the word Kokoro itself was also changed from kanji to hiragana. Premise: the work deals with the transition from the Japanese Meiji society to the modern era. By exploring the friendship between a young man and an older man he calls sensei, teacher. It continues the theme of isolation developed in Sōseki's immediately preceding works. Here in the context of interwoven strands of egotism and guilt, as opposed to shame. Other important themes in the novel include the changing times, particularly the modernization of Japan in the Meiji era, the changing roles and ideals of women, and intergenerational change in values, the role of family, the importance of the self versus the group, the cost of weakness, and identity. Structure of the work. Kokoro is written as 3 parts. The first 2 are told from the perspective of the narrator, relating his memories of Sensei, an older man who was a friend and mentor during his university days. Part 3, which makes up the latter half of the novel, is a long confessional letter written by Sensei to the narrator. In this letter Sensei reveals, in keeping with an earlier promise, the full story of his past. Plot summary. Part 1, Sensei and I. The narrator has been left on his own in Kamakura after his friend, who invited him to vacation there, is called home by his family. One day, after finishing his usual swim in the sea, he takes notice of a man in the changing house who's there with a foreign guest. Preparing to head for the water, he sees the same man each day thereafter, though no longer with his foreign companion. After some days, he finds occasion to make the man's acquaintance. As they grow closer, he comes to refer to the man as Sensei. On parting in Kamakura, as Sensei prepares to return home to Tokyo, the narrator asks if he can call on Sensei at his home sometime. He receives an affirmative, though less enthusiastic than hoped for, response. Several weeks after his own return to Tokyo, he makes an initial visit, only to find Sensei away. On his next visit, when he again finds Sensei away, he learns from Sensei's wife that Sensei makes monthly visits to the grave site of a friend, over subsequent months and years. Through periodic visits, the narrator comes to know Sensei and his wife quite well. At the same time, Sensei insists on maintaining a certain distance. He refuses to talk of his deceased friend and is reluctant to explain his own reclusion and lack of occupation. He also cautions the narrator that intimacy and admiration will only lead to future disillusionment and disdain. However, he does promise that one day, when the time is right, he will divulge in full the story of his past. Part 2, My Parents and I. The narrator returns home to the country after graduation. His father, who had been in ill health, is up and about, enjoying a respite from his illness. They set a date for a graduation celebration, only to have their plans put on hold by news of the Meiji Emperor falling ill. As the weeks go by, the narrator's father gradually loses his vigor and becomes bedridden. From his bed, he follows the papers as the emperor declines and then passes away. After the emperor's passing, the narrator is pressured by his mother to secure employment to put his father at ease. At the same time, his father's condition holds him close to home in the country. At his mother's urging, he writes to Sensei to request assistance in finding a position in Tokyo. While not expecting any favorable response on the matter of employment, He does at least expect some reply and is disappointed when none arrives. Summer wears on, and the rest of the family is summoned home in anticipation of the father's final hour. All are moved when news comes of the suicide, Junshi, of General Nogi Marasuke, who takes his own life to follow his emperor, the Meiji Emperor, in death. Shortly thereafter, a telegram from Sensei arrives, summoning the narrator to Tokyo. Unable to leave his father, the narrator refuses Sensei's request, first by telegram and then by a letter detailing his situation. Some days later, a thick letter arrives by registered mail from Sensei. Stealing away from his father's bedside, the narrator opens the letter to find it's the previously promised accounting of Sensei's past. Leafing through the pages, a line near the end catches his eye. By the time this letter reaches you, I'll be gone from this world. I'll have already passed away. Rushing to the station, the narrator boards the first train for Tokyo. Once on board, he takes out Sensei's letter and reads it through from the start. Part 3, Sensei's Testament. This latter part of the novel is related by Sensei in the form of his long-written testament that the narrator is reading aboard the train as he steams toward Tokyo. Sensei begins by explaining his reticence over the summer as he wrestled with the problem of his own continued existence. He then explains the motivation for his current actions. The remainder of the letter is an accounting of Sensei's life. Sensei grows up in the countryside and loses both of his parents to illness while still in his late teens. As an only child, he inherits the family's considerable wealth, which his uncle steps in to help manage during the years over which, as previously planned, he pursues his education in Tokyo. Each summer Sensei returns home to the country. On each such return, his uncle suggests that Sensei should marry soon and establish himself in the community as the family heir. Uninterested yet in marriage, Sensei declines to commit. As the years go on, pressure from the uncle intensifies. Then finally, the uncle proposes his own daughter, Sensei's cousin, as the bride. After Sensei's continued refusal, it comes to light that the uncle's businesses are struggling, and much of Sensei's wealth has been poured into losing ventures. Sensei, now learning the truth of his situation, salvages what remains, arranges for the sale of his house and possessions, visits his parents' grave site one last time, and turns his back on his hometown, severing all ties with his relations. Back at his studies in Tokyo, and now with his own assets in hand, Sensei decides to trade his boisterous student lodgings for calmer quarters, walking the surrounding hills. He's referred by a local shop owner to the home of a widow looking to take in a boarder. The household is quiet, with just the widow, her daughter, and a maid-servant. After a brief interview, the widow accepts Sensei as her boarder. Sensei is smitten with the daughter at first sight, but at the same time the deceit of his uncle has left him generally distrustful. The widow takes to him and treats him as family, helping to soothe his nerves and draw him out. After some time, he thinks to ask the widow for her daughter's hand but still holds back for fear that the widow, or the widow and her daughter in collusion, are playing him just as his uncle had. Sensei has a friend and classmate, whom he refers to simply as K. A, who hails from the same hometown and with whom he shared a common dormitory during his first years of study in Tokyo. K is the second son of a Buddhist priest but was sent to the family of a prominent local physician as an adoptive son. His adoptive family funds his study of medicine in Tokyo, but contrary to their wishes, K pursues his own passions of religion and philosophy. After his third year in Tokyo, he confesses his deception and is disowned as a result. Sensei feels some obligation to assist his friend, who is struggling to maintain an aggressive course of study while at the same time supporting himself. K views himself as an ascetic and strongly declines any form of financial assistance. Finally, Sensei convinces K to join him in his lodgings, arguing that K's presence there will serve toward his own spiritual betterment. After some persuasion on Sensei's part to win the widow's approval, Kei joins Sensei in the widow's home as a second boarder. After a while, with Sensei working behind the scenes, Kei warms to his new surroundings, emerges from his ascetic shell, and grows more sociable. Sensei is pleased with the improvement he's worked in his friend's demeanor, but also begins to see Kei as a rival for the daughter's affection. In the summer before their final year of studies, Sensei and Kei set out together on a walking tour of the Boshu Peninsula. They follow the shoreline from village to village, trudging under the hot sun and cooling themselves from time to time in the sea. All the while, Sensei is tormented by suspicions. He wonders if Kei might not have his eye on the daughter, and he fears that the daughter may in fact favor Kei. He longs to divulge to Kei his feelings for the daughter, but he lacks the courage to do so. Sensei and Kei return to Tokyo. Blackened by the sun and haggard from days of trekking, autumn comes and classes begin again. Sensei returns home at times to find Kei and the daughter conversing amiably, and he worries they're growing close. He thinks again to ask the widow for her daughter's hand, but again holds back, this time for fear that Kei holds the daughter's affection. Finally, during the New Year's holiday, things come to a head when the widow and her daughter leave home for the day to call on a relative. Kei comes into Sensei's room, joins him at his hibachi, and after a pained silence forces out a confession of his love for the daughter. Sensei, shocked and dismayed, is unable to muster a response. Sensei kicks himself for not at least having countered Kei's confession with his own. Through subsequent conversation, though, he finds some solace in learning that Kei's sentiments are known only to the two of them and not to the ladies. In the days that follow, Kei either cannot or will not articulate his intentions, and Sensei's anxiety persists. Finally, Kei seeks out Sensei's counsel, confiding that he's torn between his long-held ideals and his newfound passion. Sensing Kei's vulnerability, and at the same time seeking to serve his own interest, Sensei berates Kei, throwing back at him his own words on discipline and servitude to a cause. Kei asks that Sensei speak no more on the subject and withdraws into reticence. Sensei fears that Kei is preparing to shift his life's course out of love for the daughter. Resolving to preempt Kei's actions, he feigns illness, staying home for time alone with the widow. After confirming that Kei has not yet approached her, Sensei asks the widow for her daughter's hand. She acquiesces, and the matter is easily settled. That same day, the widow talks to her daughter. Within the household, only Kei remains unaware of what's transpired. Days pass, with Sensei loath to disclose to Kei what he's done. Finally, it comes to light that the widow has spoken to Kei and been surprised by his reaction. She scolds Sensei for leaving his friend in the dark. Sensei resolves to talk with Kei the next morning, but he never gets the chance. During the night, Kei takes his own life. Kei leaves behind a note, but absent is the rebuke that Sensei dreads. Kei's feelings for the daughter, along with Sensei's betrayal of his friend's trust, are forever safe from the world. Sensei notifies Kei's family and proceeds to settle affairs as requested in Kei's final note. He suggests that Kei be interred in the nearby Zoshigaya cemetery, and Kei's family agrees. Sensei and the ladies relocate shortly thereafter to a new house. Sensei finishes his studies, and half a year later weds the daughter. Sensei makes monthly pilgrimages to Kei's grave. His betrayal of Kei, and Kei's death, continue to cast a shadow over his married life. Yet he remains unable to burden his wife with his secret, having lost faith in humanity in general, and now in his own self. Sensei withdraws from the world to lead an idle life. As the years pass and he reflects further on Kei, he comes to realize that Kei's suicide was less about lost love and more about alienation and disappointment in oneself. Sensei feels himself drawn, more and more, to follow Kei's path. With the ending of the Meiji era and the passing of General Nogi, Sensei decides that he's outlived his time and must part from the world. His final request to the narrator is that his wife never know his story. That it be held private until after she's gone. End of the plot summary. Thank you. Thank you.